Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Elam Road podcast, where on tonight's show we're going to be reflecting on what seems a pretty significant loss against Burnley at the weekend. Still not in the relegation zone, but with United, Villa and Brighton all to play in our next three games, is very much looking like it could go right down to the wire this year in terms of our Premier League status. Lots to talk about in this episode, on the pitch stuff, off the pitch stuff, and we've got a full house for it. Dan, how you doing, mate?
I'm good. Good thing it wasn't a must-win.
Good thing it wasn't. It was a do not lose. Callum, how are we?
Exactly. All good, boys. Good to be back after a week off. So raring to go as always. Raring to go.
Craig, how's the KFC? That's why his camera's not on yet.
It's finished. It's finished. So I thought I'd try some of the local cuisine while I'm on the holidays here. All good. All good. Thanks, guys. Glad to be back on again.
Good stuff. Just before we get going, guys, remember to drop a comment down below, subscribe to the YouTube and Spotify channels, and also give us a follow on our socials. That's at the Elam Road on Twitter and at Elam Road Pod on Instagram. We'll start off with Tweet of the Week. Lots of candidates this time round. Went through the bookmarks. My favourite two. One was actually not like straight after the weekend. It was following Forest point deduction. Joshua Hurst saying Forest points deduction makes zero difference to us when it makes 4 points difference to us, which everyone in the comments pointed out. But my favourite has to go to Uzi. I think this might be only his second appearance on Tweet of the Week, which I'm quite surprised about. He said, no chance the narcissist is going to play 4-3-3 against United. Just make sure Roerslev, Zanka and Onyeka don't play a single minute. Vile footballers who wouldn't start for any other Premier League club. I don't know what's funnier, the fact that he's called those three players vile. It's a really weird adjective to describe a footballer with. Or the fact that he's called Thomas Frank a narcissist. Like, just very odd. But yeah,
I can't say much about that tweet. He must have been at the game on Saturday. Oh, I don't know, but yeah, it's.
Does he go to the games?
I don't even know who he is. If to be honest with you, maybe get him on the show, Mike. Pop up to him and say, "Look."
Do you know? I actually have thought about getting him on the show just so we can stand up some of the stuff that he puts on Twitter each week. But I really don't think he would do it because all I see in the replies from his tweets are, "If I ever see you at the ground, you're going to get a lump." So I don't think he goes. I don't think he goes to the games, and he's not got a positive. I don't think he writes articles about how bad Brentford are and refers to Brentford as if he doesn't support them. It's really strange. Really,
I think he
also
does actually have his own podcast as well. Not that I've listened to it, but
I can't say that I've listened to it either. I've seen it, but yeah, very strange character. But if that is something that the listeners would like to listen to, get Uzi on the podcast. Probably make for quite an entertaining episode, but let us know in the comments. Let's just start off with Burnley, boys. Dan, I'll come to you first. Where to start? Initial reaction to the result.
It's just not ideal. Obviously, the fans travel a long way to get there, and the manner of it in terms of our game plan completely unraveling after about 2 minutes is far from ideal. And it, could and should have been avoided in such a big game. Just don't do something stupid in the opening 5 minutes. And that's a frustration. And obviously, I think we all probably agree we didn't set up right to begin with. And when we were towards the end setting up in more of a front three, I thought we improved. And that almost makes me more frustrated because I think the general consensus amongst the fans were that against Burnley, you should be, you should feel more confident to go toe to toe against them and that you should be able to do that. And obviously it didn't seem like we set up in that way and it didn't work out in the end.
Callum, I'll start the lineup. Extremely negative against a side that haven't won in 4 months. Everything Dan said, I agree with in terms of we should be going toe to toe with these teams, especially considering Burnley have played a 4 in all of their games. They're not like us. They stick to their playing style as opposed to kind of switching it up depending on the opposition we're facing. And it seemed like we've been calling for a back 4 for so long now. It felt like Saturday was the ideal game to actually do it, considering we can start with a 4, whether that be Roerslev on the right or Ira in the middle or Ira on the right. And then we got KLP, Wisser and Tony up top. But Callum, what was your reaction to the lineup and also just your initial thoughts on the game?
So with regards to the lineup, frustrating. I think Thomas is seriously concerned with the amount of goals we are conceding at the moment from a variety of different options on the pitch, whether it's set pieces or just kind of how the goals were scored on Saturday. Really, to be honest with you, I think it's a rather negative style with how we're playing at the moment against a team, as you rightfully say, Mike. On such low confidence and low form, setting up with a 5 at the back against a team like that is just setting up for trouble to start with. We should have been going to Burnley with full of confidence by the fact, granted, yes, we're on such a poor run ourselves, but we're playing such a team who are out of form. We should have gone there and beaten them. Quite frankly, we let ourselves down, really, to be honest with you. There are players on that bench who should have started. We should have set up in a 4-3-3. We should have got at Burnley, because that is what was causing them the issues in the second half, was that we were attacking them with such pace, they didn't know what to do with us. And the only reason why we conceded that second goal was because KLP was all the way up front and he vacated his position at left back. And of course, we were down to 10 men, and obviously that was the end of that. But frustrating, Mike. We should have got the 3 points, and we had enough quality in that starting lineup and on that bench to get those 3 points, and we didn't do it. We didn't deliver, and it's frustrating, to say the least.
Yeah, we'll get on to kind of criticisms of Thomas Frank's opting for the back 5. It's kind of difficult. I haven't got it in the running order, but it's kind of difficult to judge. I think we probably would have won the game if Reguilon doesn't get sent off, but even still, it's still frustrating to see us go to a team like Burnley, who have just been promoted and they're having such a terrible season. Granted, we are as well, but it's just, it kind of sets out a sort of negative stance before the ball's even kicked. Craig, let's get onto the red card, because Reguilon's got a lot of shit from Brentford fans since he signed. For me, it's been a little bit unjustified, but back in the lineup after missing out because of injury against Arsenal, and then essentially, like we've said, condemns Brentford to a loss against the side who have been so poor all season. Thoughts on the red card? Any complaints about anything?
Well, the biggest complaint is the consistency. We highlighted it. Like I said, you, Mike, on Twitter highlighted it through the Eden Road pod, that it's happened to us on multiple occasions, and teams are getting away with it, consistently getting away with it as well. It happens to us. The first scenario of it happening to us, it ends in a penalty, and then we're down to 10 men as well. I understand the red card, because he's just about to wind his leg back and shoot, and he pushes him. So I can see the red card. It didn't look like there was an attempt for the ball, but what was the difference when Kudos done it to Reguilon 2 weeks ago? Mm-hmm. What was the difference when Robertson done it to Ivan 3 weeks ago? What was the difference when Consa done it to Maupay like 2 months ago? It's just, I think that if we're going to use VAR, we've got to use it properly. There's an incredible lack of consistency from the Premier League, from the officials, and from the VAR.
It's also, for me, another thing that stood out in terms of, and we're not going to spend the whole pod talking about refereeing decisions, but it's hard not to when there's decisions being made like this every week. But for me, the other thing about their penalty is that the ref doesn't call it as he sees it, because he knows that he's got VAR to bail him out. But it's the most clear-cut penalty. I was listening to the Burnley podcast. He saw it from the other side of the ground in the lower tier. He knew it was a penalty. Everyone sees it's a penalty the first time, and he's leaving the decision for VAR to make. But then there's one in the second half where he leaves that and VAR doesn't pick it up. So you're absolutely right. It's the consistency, and I don't want to spend too long on VAR stuff. But like you mentioned, the one on Tony, the one on Reguilon at West Ham, they're essentially the same tackle. Obviously, ours is a bit worse because it's going to lead to a goal. But take that factor out, it's a push in the back, it's in the box. Those two weren't given, and the one on Saturday was. And the rest of the story, Callum, I can see you're wanting to come in.
No, I'll tell you, and I'll keep it brief because I know you don't want to talk about too much about the referees, but I thought they were an absolute shambles, all 3 of them on Saturday. I'll tell you, Mike, they were making stuff up as they were going along. As you rightfully say, a clear-cut penalty, which the referee didn't give, for which the shambles then continued afterwards because someone couldn't be bothered to test the system beforehand, clearly. And then we're all wondering what the hell was going on for 5. No one said anything, by the way. we're all wondering what's going on. They're not telling anyone on the board what's being checked. Obviously, it was a penalty. And then what made things even worse was, again, no one put anything on the board to say that they were checking the red card. And it's just like, this is the Premier League, meant to be the best league in the world, and shit like this is going on. I think it's laughable. You wouldn't see it anywhere else, to be honest with you. And throughout the game, little incidents were happening. You know, again, we won't talk too much about Zanka because I think that's ridiculous. That's nonsense. I can't believe that's not been given. And I've been speaking to one of the Burnley podcasts. They've touched upon one of my tweets and said they got away with it as well. They don't understand how it hasn't been given. But little things throughout the game, like the linesmen raising their flags when they've been told not to do it. Now, fair enough. All right, it could be clear, but again, just leave it. Just let the play continue and then pull it back where necessary. Like, they were putting their flags up left, right, and centre. They honestly, they lost complete control, all the officials on Saturday, and for a spectacle. And again, the Burnley podcast who I was chatting to at length completely agreed. For a spectacle, the officials made an absolute farce of that game on Saturday. It was not good for a viewing point of view whatsoever. And there needs to be punishments put in place for these officials. Paul Tierney, yet again, involved in controversy. It's like he wants everyone to be, he wants to make the relegation fight a bit more interesting. Like, and then he then goes off to Chelsea on the Sunday like he's done nothing wrong. Like, sack him off, honestly. Anyway, rant over. Let's move on. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're right. You're right about it being a scrappy game. Certainly in that first half, there was so many fouls given. Maybe a little bit reluctant to let play go on, but I don't want to spend too much time. Like we've spoken about the Zanka one now. It pisses me off as well. Just the last little bit when you see the ref watch stuff in the week, and it's like every single week they're just saying, "I don't know how the referee's not given that." And Dermot Gallagher stood there and he's trying to explain what the PGMOL said to him. It's just like, just make the right decision, please, 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 please. Because at the moment, it's costing us points. And it's like, it could go down because of them. Dan, I'm going to come to you next. Let's steer clear of the refereeing decisions. Wissa, for me, has to score that chance before half-time, although I kind of want to give Muric the benefit of the doubt in that it's a very, very good save. But I think he probably could go low. But I'm not going to get onto Wissa's one-on-one finishing because I think we've all kind of agreed if there's one player in the team that we want to go through one-on-one with a goalkeeper, it's probably Wissa. So I'm just going to put that down to a good save. Thomas Frank trying to G the fans up at half-time. Dan, how did that go down? Was it a good look considering the lineup, considering the red card in the first 5 minutes?
Yeah, I think he's got to understand that football fans who go every week, especially like the strong away support, that we're not stupid. Like, we do understand what's going on, and we have a right to disagree with some of the decisions he's making. That doesn't mean I want Thomas Frank out. I know there were some boos at halftime, but again, I'm not sure that was necessarily directed at the players. Maybe a bit of both, but obviously you can understand how that would also be directed at the referees. Mm-hmm. But in terms of Thomas Frank, I think he's got to be a bit careful. I think, we have a right to disagree with him. I do think he got it wrong. Obviously, he's got a hell of a lot right in the last 5 or so years, which is why we still support him. But we've probably been the worst team in the Premier League since Christmas. Mm-hmm. Maybe except for Sheffield United because they've had a few real pump-ins. But apart from that, we've been quite bad for a long time now. And I know he's got injuries, but I don't think we're making the best out of what we've got. Like someone like Keane Lewis-Potter, I'll keep saying it. I think when he's been played in a proper position, he's been one of our best players for the last 3 months. But we're just taking that confidence out of him. We're taking that momentum out of him because he's not playing where he's meant to be playing. And that's when he even starts. And we're not getting the most out of what we have at the moment, I don't think, which is why the frustration is there. And obviously Thomas Frank wants us on side, but I think he also needs to understand how deflating it is because the red card was Reguilon's fault ultimately. He lost his man. He wasn't watching. He made a stupid mistake. He pushed him over after a few minutes. Whereas, even if he had let him score, we still have a better chance. And he's got to understand where our frustrations come from, I think.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I've got a whole bit on Thomas Frank because there's been some kind of backlash towards his tactics and even some people suggesting that he should go in this summer. But I figured we could probably do that as a whole little conversation because I think we'll go quite a long way in that. Craig, for me, I think the game hinges on that KLP chance. I know you've been singing his praises, Dan, but for me, the second half when he goes for on goal and he has Wisser to his left, he either has to score or play Wisser in for him to score, but he loses the ball. Callum, I know you were angry with the fact that he didn't chase it down. They go up the other end. Odegaard plays Fofana through, and I want to talk about Zanka's positioning for the goal. But when that goes in, Craig, it's game over, especially against 10 men. But the most frustrating thing is just when we started to push, and it's just like, it's these little moments in these games. I'm thinking about Tottenham and these moments where we get close and then the momentum just completely goes and then we bring it back, we get another goal, but we can't get over the line. But when you put yourself 2-0 down, you've only got 10 men, Craig, and you're giving up chances like that and not tracking back when you need to, it's always going to be a long day.
I mean, obviously, playing 10 men against 11 is going to be difficult for any team. When you put players out there, they're going to be shattered quickly compared to what the other team is going to be. But when we gift them possession of the ball, and we making life difficult for ourselves by overplaying it or underplaying it. We've never done it. Well, I say never. We haven't done it right for a long while now. Like Dan said, probably been the worst team in the league. I would say even with Sheffield United doing better than us. I mean, they beat us, and then they've taken some tonkins, like you said, since. But my concern still, and I've said this on so many times when we've spoken on these, we are not difficult to score against. It is not hard for teams to score against us. We do not make it difficult for them whatsoever. And you're going to talk about Zanka's position in a minute, but when we think about that goal, how is a player able to run through two of the centre-backs with no one near him? I mean, Collins, I think, makes the right decision and goes to press the ball, but Zanka does not follow the player whatsoever. He just kind of stands still, stays in his position, and then he's through one-on-one. Obviously, Mark tried to get out as quick as he could. Unfortunately, just the striker was there quicker than he was. But when you're thinking about KLP, if he passes it and Wicker misses, we're going to say, why hasn't KLP done it? Or why hasn't KLP shot and things like that? So that's kind of the lesser of two evils. But when we don't make things difficult for opposition, we make it difficult for ourselves.
Yeah. I want to get your take on this, Callum. For me, I'm watching that goal back, and Zanka's caught in two minds between whether he wants to play the offside trap, and if he does play the offside trap, then he has to step forward. But you either follow the man or you play the offside trap, and he does neither. He just stands still and lets Fofana run off him. And you can just see the goal happen before, as soon as he goes in behind, you know the pass he's going to play. He doesn't step up, he doesn't go back with him, and he's through on goal and he pushes the dink finish. But your thoughts on Zanka's performance, Callum, because he has gotten a lot of heat from that Burnley game.
Very much so. I mean, we've got to look back and say that, he's been put in here at the deep end. I don't think he was expecting to play as much as obviously he has for this certain period of the season. But for looking at what he is as a player and offering us, particularly on what he did on Saturday, he simply was not good enough to be on that pitch, and he has been like that for a period of time. I think he's been a great professional for the club, but what he is doing at the moment is he's creating so many opportunities for players of the opposition to score goals. And you say that, Mike. Yeah, absolutely. On Saturday, he was in two minds, in particular with that second goal of whether to press towards the ball or play the offside trap. He did not know what to do, and in that split second, you need to do that. You need to know what you're going to do and stick with it and take that gamble. But obviously, the issue we've got is, who do you play? Do you play a back four and drop him effectively to the bench, or do you play this back five and put a player in there who is playing so inconsistently as he is at the moment? It's a hard one, but I was disappointed, really disappointed with his performance on Saturday, and I expected more. Absolutely, expected more from a player with that experience as well. Let's not forget the experience he has as a player. He should know better, but let's see. let's see. Hopefully, Pinnock's back in no time at all, and we can send him back to the bench. But at the moment, we've got to live with what we got. So, but yeah.
Well, you teed me up nicely because I do want to talk about some of the positives from the game. But you're absolutely right in that if Thomas Frank is wanting, and this comes into the question in his tactics again, but if Thomas Frank is wanting us to adopt a different style this season, as he has been without Tony, want to play out from the back a little bit more, it baffles me why he consistently is picking Zanka when he's god awful on the ball. Whereas we've got two other centre halves, Nathan Collins and Christopher Ayer. Granted, neither have been amazing, but they've not been as bad as Zanka. When he's on the ball, genuinely, I worry he either gives it away or he kicks it out of play, which are both the same thing. So it's difficult, and that's why I think we've been questioning his tactics for a while now. But that Burnley game, I think he's got it terribly wrong, and obviously he can't plan for the red card. But let's focus on some of the positives.
I must touch on before you go to the positives. Actually, Mike, I don't.
One more negative
line. I'll keep one more. I don't think they're helping Flecken very much as well. Now, I don't know if you'd gone for a half-time drink at this point, Dan, on Saturday, but late on in the second half,
That's all right.
Oh my words! Honestly, I was having kittens. I'll tell you honestly.
No communication.
Flecken, no communication whatsoever. Fofana is standing right behind Flecken, and he's chucked the ball out. Where's the and Fofana's grabbed the ball, and I'm saying we're shouting at Flecken. Where are the players him to say don't ball out? I mean, oh goodness me! I think all of them at the back at the moment are seriously worrying about conceding goals, and there's just no communication. Flecken should have had a shout there and said, "Look, there's a player standing behind you here. Don't do what you're about to do." And he did it, and I was like, "Oh my word!" When he got that ball, wasn't it, Dan? I was like, "Oh."
He recovered well. He recovered well, but I did go a bit mad at that point. That was the most fuming I got during the game. I went even madder than when we conceded the penalty.
Yeah.
What are you doing? I was panicking.
Yeah.
It was an nervy one for sure. I haven't seen that in the Prem in a very long time. I remember seeing a couple of them on Premier League years, but I've not seen a keeper drop the ball in the Premier League at least. Probably happens in the AFL, not so regularly, but still more often than in the Prem. But when they drop the ball and someone went behind them, but thank God that didn't go in. Otherwise, it would have been game over before half time. So let's focus on some of the positives. Aya pulls one back, too little, too late. But I think we said before we started recording, 5 more minutes. I think we probably would have got that equaliser. I don't really have any complaints with I think it would have gone down as a Baptiste goal if it was allowed. But I don't really have any complaints with it. I think if that was us, we'd want it to be disallowed. So, but for me, positives to take. Brian Craig looked really good back. I think Aya did have a good game. Collins, for me, Dan, was fantastic as well the whole game. I thought that was one of his better games for us. And Yarmo and Baptiste both made good impressions. So, I mean, any of them in contention to start for the next game, Dan? I know we've got an international break and there's going to be players coming back. So it's difficult to know. Sorry, Craig, I teed you up there and then went to Dan. I'm trying to go around. I'm trying to go around. But yeah, Dan, what did you make of the substitutions?
We're still going, Dan.
No, because you'll get the next one, Craig. We'll come to you next.
I'll hold you to it.
Obviously, I like the substitutions, but I think it just illustrated why I think we should play to our strengths from the start. Because, in all honesty, we ended up playing a back four for most of that game because obviously the red card, and I don't think we defended much better or worse than we normally do. So, I think that just shows that we should be playing to our strengths, which is those forward players. Particularly now, obviously, for a little while now, we've had Wissa, Tony, KLP, Morpay. Obviously, we've got Mbumo now. I thought Mbumo looked particularly good when he came on, and I was quite surprised because I thought any player that's been out for 4 months, I don't think he's played any B team football, so I think this is his first game back in. I was just surprised how sharp he looked. And it was also the first time we saw Morpay and Tony on the pitch together, I believe, in a free. I'm not really sure who was kind of playing out wide. I don't think any of them really were, but I thought it all worked quite well together, and we overloaded them a little bit, and we're with 10 men. But in a way, it just frustrated me a bit more because, we could have started with something similar to that. I didn't expect Mbumo to start, but with the others could have started. Obviously in the next game, I expect Mbumo to start. I think it'll be a back five. So I think it will just be Mbeumo and Tony up front. But again, I think unless we are confident, and Thomas Frank is confident that those in defence can stay solid, then a back five is fine. But if we are not confident in their abilities, and I can't really say that I am at the moment, then I think we should play to our strengths, which would be a front three. And we've got the players now to fill that.
Yeah. I mean, Craig, you've been saying it. Actually, no, we'll go to Callum first. No, Craig, you've been saying it of late in terms of you're not confident in a game. To win a game, we're going to have to outscore the opposition, which kind of plays into what Dan's saying in terms of playing to our strengths with some of the forward players we've got coming back. We'll go to this now. We've got Brian, Kevin, Christian, and Ethan should, and I put that in asterisks, should be back after the international break. But what were your positives to take from the game, Craig, in terms of the subs coming on, in terms of how well we did considering we had a man disadvantage in that second half, especially in those last 15 minutes?
Well, point I wanted to make at the start, but you kind of didn't come to me with my perspective of the game. Went to them two and then we just went straight into it again then. What we did was we made a team that was already relegated a team that is now hopeful for survival based on beating us. Before this game, Burnley were dead and buried. Everyone was certain they were going down. They probably still are certain they're going down, but all of a sudden we've made them look hopeful, you know? So that's what I wanted to say at the start before you skipped over me.
Get the violin out, mate. Jesus Christ, a podcast.
So you asked the question to Dan saying, are they in contention of starting? I think with the way we've been and how shambolic we've been of late, everybody is in contention of starting. However, we know what the players will be and what the formation will be going into every game, because for some reason Thomas Frank seems a little bit set in his ways at the moment and doesn't look comfortable in changing what is happening. And I don't want to say it, but he kind of looks like he's run out of ideas a little bit this season. So maybe once we get to the end of the season, if we can stay up, we need a big refresh, and hopefully he's our manager going into next season. But I mean, players like Shandon and players like Yarmo and Brian, obviously, they're going to come on and make an impact to any game, in any situation. You know, was it Baptiste got the assist, didn't he, for the first goal, and then he's put that dangerous ball in for what was a disallowed goal in the end. Which, yeah, you're right. I probably would have wanted that disallowed if it was against us as well. But I mean, I would have taken it very, very much. Would have taken it as well. We've got so many good players, but we're a massive team of individuals at the moment, and it doesn't look like there's a spark coming from any one of them. We just need this little break now, and we go into the United game with a fresh set of legs coming into the squad, with Ethan hopefully coming back, as you said, Brian hopefully starting, Northar coming back, and Sharda rising from
still loading. Still loading.
The second coming, shall we say, because I'm sure that we buried him a little while back, and all of a sudden he's back again. You know, a bit of freshness, a bit of players who could provide some intensity. And Brian will run Maguire and Martinez ragged. Even Varane, he'll run them ragged if he's on his game. I think that this break now needs to provide us with a fresh start. We need to go into this last 10 games with our heads right. Last season we was the first season we were struggling at this point of the season, and then we won like 7 of the last 10 games. So we know that we can do it, and the players that we're talking about, they need to be able to make an impact and put their name in the contention for starting, even though we know realistically they're not going to, because we know what our best team is. But there's nothing saying they can't make a difference, because they can. Yeah,
100%. It's a good point you make about Burnley fans being, well, at least Burnley players and fans being dead and buried before the game. I went and listened to their full-time show. And bearing in mind, I've spoken to that Burnley fan, and he was saying we're as good as gone. Like, a win on Saturday wouldn't change too much, but it's given them proper hope. Trust me, that was one of the most upbeat podcasts I've ever listened to. And that just shows how criminal it was to lose on Saturday, because they haven't won in so long. And granted, wins for us are few and far between at the moment, but they were absolutely ecstatic to get that win on Saturday. Absolutely ecstatic. And they're now thinking, you know, it's improbable that they stay up, but it's not impossible. So the fact that we've got Luton and Sheffield United still to play, it's not looking good, bruv. But like you say, Craig, like it's a good chance. The international break for us couldn't have come at a better time in terms of players coming back, the chance to reset. And if the last 10 minutes of Burnley and Brian Mbumo, like you mentioned, Dan, I did not expect him to be that sharp. And when he came on, it was like when he came on, he changed the game. So
it's because Dan said he'd be warming up for the whole half before he came.
Or is there a hamstring running up and down the touchline?
Callum, any positives to take from the game for you before we move on to some of like the off the pitch stuff that I want to talk about?
Just the players who came on and created quite a lot for us. I was very pleased to see Baptiste. We haven't seen him, I don't think, since the Spurs game, actually, I think, or in around that period of time. So very pleased to see him come on, create some very good opportunities, set up that obviously the first goal for us, or the one and only goal. So I mean, look, I mean, I'd love to see him get some more minutes, but no, just the substitutions, Bremo as well. What I would say about this international break, we are saying, yes, it is key for us at the moment to have a break, but we have, I think, 17 players or something like that, I think the club said, or whatever figure they put out on social media earlier, who are out playing for their country. Let's not have any injuries. I mean, goodness gracious, if Ibrahimo goes and gets injured again, I'll tell you, that's it. I'm done. That's it. I'm out of here. But no, I mean, you got Norgard going off to play for Denmark, Jensen going off, Rodslev as well has now got a call up as well. Tony, I mean, well, I don't think he'll get any minutes. I mean, he's been crap recently, isn't he, realistically? So,
he will get minutes because Kane and Watkins
injured.
are injured. Yeah, Kane and Watkins are injured, I'm pretty sure. He'll definitely get minutes.
Didn't Christian pull out with the Denmark squad?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah.
Did it? No, never mind. What a shame. Oh, well.
I'm quite happy for Rodslev getting a call up though. That's quite nice. I saw that, and that's his maiden call up now. He's played under 21s for Denmark, I believe, before. But so good on him for getting that call up. Let's talk about Ivan Toney, as we do every week. But let's talk about Ivan Toney before we get on to some of the Frank postseason stuff, because did another interview last week, which we're all ecstatic about, I'm sure. Dan, any thoughts on the interview, his performance, both of them taken together? It was a bit of, I mean, to be honest, just for me, it just pisses me off. Why can this man not keep his fucking mouth shut? Like every time he does an interview, he says something stupid, and it's clear that it's a joke. But you don't make those kinds of jokes when you're in a relegation battle and your team are fighting to stay in the league, and you're talking about your summer plans to move to fucking Real Madrid. It just, for me, Dan, it's just a little bit like, just stop doing these interviews, please.
Yeah, and I've said it all before. It doesn't help that he's now, what is it, four games or so without a goal. And like I said before as well, I do hold him to higher standards because of the way he speaks and because of the way he, who he wants to be and who he thinks he is. He's not been amazing. Obviously, I don't think it helps the way we've been playing either. I don't think he's had the greatest support around him, and I'm hopefully he'll improve being back with Brian on the pitch in a couple of weeks' time. But yeah, I don't like it. I mean, the only positive you can say, I guess, is that he seems to be popular in the dressing room. He doesn't seem to be causing problems internally. Because if that wasn't the case and there were issues with teammates and he wasn't very popular, then I think that would be a much bigger issue. And we wouldn't be able to get over that. But yeah, I mean, a lot of it probably has to do with his new agents as well. The reason he's popping up, giving out awards and all these interviews, he's obviously got a very good agent who's getting him out into the public eye. Yeah, I'm going to one of the England games next week, so we will see if he makes an appearance.
Do you want him to do well for England, Dan?
Yes, I suppose so. I mean, I would probably prefer if it was someone like Rico Henry.
Yeah,
if it was a
100%.
Brentford player who I, actually liked as a person, and not to say that sounded terrible, didn't it?
No, you can say that. I
mean,
fucking can't stand the guy.
Yeah, we don't like him as a person, and
no.
It's how he portrays himself and what he's doing. But I still think it is a sign of how far we've come that there is a Brentford player playing for England. And I suppose I want him to do well, although it might just cause more comments coming from his way. So maybe I don't want him to do well. Don't know.
I think I'm indifferent about it now. I don't care
Yeah.
if he scores for England. I don't care if he doesn't score for England. For me now, he's set his stall. He's leaving in the summer. He's making jokes while the club that he pays his wages are in a relegation fight about moving to Real Madrid. It's just time and a place, mate. And for me, I think Callum, I can't believe you put him as a Brentford legend when we did the tier list episode. I really think you need to take those words
This
back,
is
mate.
before I mean, look, if it was on comedy value, he'd be at the bottom of the list, to be honest with you. But I mean, it's no. I'll tell you, he's not going to get a move to a top club. I mean, realistically, the only clubs that I think that club that might be interested in the Premier League is probably Newcastle, and I've always said that. You know, but and also I actually I'm thinking about it when you're talking about Ivan Toney, even Saudi or somewhere like that. Realistically, I think I can't see him getting a big club. I can't see him going to Arsenal. I just don't see where he fits in. I can't see him going to Chelsea. City, not a chance. United, nah, they've already got options up front already. Where's he going to go? Where's he going to go realistically? Like it's Leeds if they came up, maybe. I don't know. But,
Yeah, their fans would love him, wouldn't they, if he spoke about their club the way that he speaks about us.
Oh
We're
my
such
God,
a
can you imagine?
We're such a weak-willed fan base that we allow this to happen. And
but
no.
I don't think it helps. Our social media lot, they just constantly
They suck
piping
him
him
off,
up,
mate.
and
They
no, I know
absolutely
it's just
suck him off.
nonsense.
It's ridiculous.
It's nonsense.
It's
It's like
I had this conversation with.
He's actually a prick. Let's be honest. He's actually a prick. But when he scores goals, and he's more of a prick at the moment because he's not scoring, and the fact that he's not scoring means because he's being a prick off the pitch, it makes him look like when he was scoring like 20 goals in the Premier League last season, and then being an arsehole off the pitch, you're thinking, man, okay, look, if you're gonna fucking score a load of goals for us, just watch your tone. But when you're not scoring and you've still got that finger up your ass, that ego that is way up here, but you're not scoring the goals, you just look like a dickhead. And he doesn't do himself any favors. But our PR team, we put a rocket up his ass and let him do whatever he wants to do.
It's so weird because I feel like if he could listen to some of what we're saying, do you think it would have any effect on the way that he acts? Because it's like surely there has to be someone in the squad or someone that is close to him telling him this is not a good look. You're not getting the fans on side when you're doing this. Fair enough. We know that you're a very good player, but the fact that you've come back and you've been pretty underwhelming since, like, it's really not a good look. You're really making a lot of enemies with Brentford fans.
Does he care? Does he care if he has a fan on the side? I don't know.
I mean,
he
knows he's already gone, really, doesn't he? If he knows he's already out the door, we'll sell him at a cut price if we have to, just to get him out of the club, which is, we're saying we want 100 mil, 80 mil for him. Spurs or someone will come in and go, we will give you 55, 60 million. We go, all right, just fucking take him. Just get him gone.
You don't have to behave like that to get a move, though. Like, David Raya didn't behave like that to get a move. There's a lot of players down the line who didn't do that.
That's just who he is. That's just who he is. He's had one really successful season in the Prem, one not kind of successful, which was the first season where he scored 15 goals. So he had a semi-successful season. First season in the Prem, you could call it a success. Second season, misses the last 10 games because he's been suspended for gambling. Misses half of this season and still acts as if he's bigger than the club is. It signifies a massive lack of respect for the club. And I feel like we could do another whole episode on this. So before we divulge any further into it, we should move on.
We should move on. But I wonder when the fans will stop singing his name. I wonder if we're at a point that
they didn't do it on Saturday. They didn't do it on Saturday. There was a lot of people who were slightly pissed off with him, actually, in my area in particular, because there was a few incidents where he just wasn't jumping for the ball or pressing for the ball, for example. Whether he knew he was being called up to the England squad at that point, I don't know. But that effort wasn't there, which I thought, think was there at parts, last season and maybe at the start, of his comeback this season. Whether it's frustration, I don't know. But there was certainly some moments in our area on Saturday where people were starting to turn on Ivan Toney. So, he may not give a shit, but realistically, people are starting to pick up at he's not doing what we want him to do at the moment. And, hopefully in time he'll get better. I want him to go and do well. I want him to go and do well for England. I want him to go and kick on and do well for us for the rest of the season. But at this moment in time, he's not doing what we want him to do. So keep that mouth shut, Ivan, and go and score some goals instead, please. Thank you very much.
He clearly doesn't listen to the podcast, so you're speaking into the void.
Even if he heard you, he'd be going, no.
Right, let's move on. Let's move on from Ivan. We've got quite, I don't know, the amount of tweets that I saw post Burnley about Thomas Frank, about the fact that any other manager would have been sacked from this form. And I think that is a true statement. Any other manager would have been sacked with the form that we're in. But some people saying we should sack him now. Some people saying he should be gone in the summer. We need a restart. For me, and I put it out on the Eden Road Twitter podcast, Eden Road Twitter account. For me, it's like, it's we can do all the things that we've been doing, but to say that we should have a fresh restart in the summer is a bit out of line for me. It's like you got very short memories to be able to say we've completely done this season, especially given the context of the injuries and the fact that we only signed one player in January. To say that Thomas Frank should be gone, it's just like we came up to the Premier League with Thomas Frank. We finished 13th in our first season and 9th in our second season, a couple of points of Europe. This season we've been terrible, but you factor into that we've had 8-9 first team starters out for a lot of the season. It's difficult for me. So like, I want to get Dan, we'll come to you first. Just your view on the whole kind of just the fact that some people are saying we'd be better if we're out Frank, or because it's something that we've been speaking about. We spoke about it on the last podcast, Callum, in terms of, do we think he's going to have had enough in terms of being in the Premier League with all the injuries and the fact that we don't have much money? But Dan, first to you. Let's go first. What are your thoughts on some of the reaction from Saturday in terms of Frank?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I do like him, but I don't agree with some of his decisions at the moment. And I think even in the Championship, when we had some iffy runs in the Championship, I do remember back then he took a bit too long at times to change things. And part of what I thought we had moved on and he had learned from in the last couple of years was his ability to be a bit more flexible, depending on who we're playing against. But I think now we just seem to be stuck in this back five formation. He maybe doesn't trust the players he's got as much as, if everyone's around. But if you're seriously thinking of getting rid of him now, then you've got to think, well, who's going to come in and do a better job? I mean, I still think we will end up being okay, but it's obviously not a nice situation to be in. I mean, we're not really used to, in the modern era, we're not used to having a season where we're losing almost every week, because realistically it's probably about 2007 when we got relegated from League One and ended in the bottom half of League Two the year later. That was probably the last time that we lost most weeks, which is a long time ago. So we're not really used to it. Obviously, I know in the past we've not, historically we've not been that successful. But
yeah, we need to say that older fans will be annoyed. The older fans are very used to it, but us as the younger generation aren't used to it, because I know that a lot of the older fans that listen will be like, hang on a minute, Brentford are shit, we've been shit for ages. But carry on.
Yeah, I know that. Obviously, we're not a club that historically has won things, but obviously it's been a long time. And even if I had lived through more of the down years, if you get used to something for 17 odd years, then it's still a bit of a shock to feel like that. But obviously we've got to remember where we are, and I do still think we'll be okay at the end of it. And I don't really think bringing in someone new would increase, it may increase our chances of being in trouble, but I don't think it would really decrease our chances of being in trouble with what we've got, to be honest.
Craig?
People being injured are what has kept him in this job. Now, I posted a tweet a little while back that said, if any other manager had been on this run, would they still, have have a job. And a lot of people said no, they wouldn't. And this weekend just kind of highlighted that point that this is, we went and lost to Sheffield United, and that was low. But for me, this is the lowest point of our season so far. Going Burnley, setting up as a back five, going down to 10 men inside the first 5 minutes, and then losing 2-1. This is the lowest point of our season. But when you hit the bottom, there's only one way you can go, which is up. So
Or down.
fingers crossed. Well, when you hit,
We're not at the bottom yet.
You know what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying.
I know what you're
Figure of
saying.
speech. But yeah, no manager could come into this job and change anything with, the players that we still got out. I know we have players coming back, but if we get players coming back after the international break in, Brian starting, Pinnock coming back, Sharda coming back apparently, Norgard coming back. If we get those 4 players back, realistically, the fullbacks are the only positions in which our main starters are out, injured, being Rico and Aaron Hickey. We've got Reguilon in, and we've got that cover. We've got Roslev, we've got Aya at right backs. We've got that covered. If we carry on performing the way we're performing and losing the games in the way in which we're losing them, then he could be in big trouble, because at the moment, the fact that we've got players out is what is keeping him in.
Callum, I'm going to ask you the same thing, but just kind of with the perspective on it that we kind of said. I remember we had a conversation 2 episodes ago about whether we think Thomas Frank will be fed up with this season in terms of the injuries that we've had. The fact that I think there's going to be a vacancy at West Ham, which I really, really would not be surprised to see Thomas Frank be in the running for that. The fact that you mentioned his backroom staff, and since you mentioned that, Bernardo Cueva, the set piece coach, is on his way to Chelsea. Just your thoughts on it, Callum?
Yeah, no, I think it's going to be an interesting few months ahead, to be honest with you, with Thomas Frank. I hadn't seen a reaction from Thomas like that on Saturday, where he's trying to gear up the supporters in the fashion that he was, and that's frustration. I think he's really frustrated with how this season's panning out at the moment, and probably not one he was expecting in the position to be in currently at the moment, especially with how we started off the season as well, and how we've dramatically fallen down the league and the results that have happened as well. But I think it's going to be an interesting one. I still feel we could be looking at a new manager next season at Brentford. Whether that involves him going off to a new club, or whether he takes a break to work out his next move as such. I don't know. It's a bold statement, but as we say again, throughout periods of his time at Brentford, the people who have been developed around him have left one by one and gone off to other things. And each and every time we've replaced someone, they've also left as well. And you just think, again, I'd say exactly the same as what I said the other week, as a manager, and off the back of this season so far, do you think to yourself, well, maybe it is time to move on? I don't know, but I hope he doesn't. I think he could still offer a lot to this football club and going forward. But I don't think he'll go West Ham, though, Mike. I really don't think West Ham is a good move for Thomas Frank. I think it's actually a backward step, personally. Regardless of, I'm being deadly serious. I'm being look. You go to a club. We are quite good with Thomas Frank. We say, if he's not going through a good period like we are at the moment, we've actually been quite considerate of Thomas Frank. If he goes to a club like West Ham, you've seen their fans there, they will turn on him straight away. And you've seen managers leave a club like West Ham in no time at all. And I think it'll be a backward step for Thomas Frank to go there and try and live up to what they've had over the last few seasons, of being European champions in the Conference League, could possibly be European champions in the Europa League this year. And if he goes into a club like that off back-to-back European titles, the pressure's going to be on him. And I don't think it's a right fit for him personally. I think there's better fits out there for Thomas Frank. And I think because of that, I think it'll be a backward step. off because of that for him personally. But
I agree that's probably a better fit, and it could. And West Ham fans are unhappy with David Moyes despite their European success in recent years. The fact that they're in a quarter-final for the third year in a running. But I wouldn't say it was a backwards step in terms of his career. Like, West Ham are a bigger football club. They're in Europe. They're pushing up the table. Like, it might turn out to be a backwards step in that it could go tits up quite fast. But right now, you're going from relegation threatened Brentford to European title chasing West Ham. It's very much a forward step, Callum. So I'm going to have to completely and utterly disagree with you there. But
I respect that, Mike. I respect that.
closing thoughts on Frank. Just in terms of like the reaction from fans, Dan, were you surprised to see the amount of people? I was really shocked to see the amount of people that were kind of saying it's time for him to go, despite, like, even if we stay up, that we need a new start. Because, like, for me, we've had Thomas Frank for what, like 7 years now. I think he's like one of the longest serving managers in the EFL. I can't picture Brentford without Thomas Frank because it was so long ago that we had a different manager. But just in terms of the amount of people that would just kind of take this season as it is and just say, no, we need a fresh start, I was just surprised to see that. What was your take on it? We'll do another round and then we'll go to United in the relegation picture.
I think it's the nature of football fans. I think it doesn't really surprise me. I mean, I'm not in the boat of saying that he should go, but it doesn't surprise me at all. I think any team in our position would have a section of the fan base saying the same. I would still like to think most Brentford fans are on his side. But I mean, we've lost 17 Premier League games this season. We only lost 9 in the whole of last season. So, we've lost a lot of games this year. And it's not nice to watch. And I think it makes everyone stressed. It makes everyone worried because obviously no one wants us to go down. So people are frustrated. And I think it's understandable to be frustrated. I think it's understandable to not agree with everything he does, which I don't. But for what he's done for us and for the fact that I don't think there's a significantly better option out there, I just don't think that it's right at the moment. But it doesn't surprise me at all.
What about you, Craig?
Just for context, he's the 5th longest serving manager now since that chap at Accrington Stanley.
I beat you to that one, Craig. I bet you were researching that one up. I said that the other week. Late news, Craig. Late news.
No, you said it last week, but just to point out that,
John Coleman, by the way. John Coleman was the guy.
The 5th longest serving manager. 5.5 years. Or Callum, if you know specifically how many days, feel free to shout me out.
Andy was there before that as well.
He came in September, October time because I'm pretty sure Dean Smith left around October time, wasn't it? I think September, October. Yeah, it was October. What's that? Who?
6th of March 2000.
Who? Dean Smith
left in
October. Dean Smith left in October. I remember. And then Thomas Frank's first win was against Millwall. So,
Yeah, my mistake. 16th October 2018. I read the wrong one. I was reading Mark Robins, Coventry manager.
Mark Robins. Goodness me.
I'll be quiet about that now. I think we got. What was the question?
Were you surprised to see some of the reaction from Saturday?
No.
No.
I'm not surprised based on our recent form. I say recent, just this season. Dan, you're totally right, mate. We've had so many years of recent success, probably going back, like you said, 10, 15 years now. And I think that our first season in Premier League was the first time in like 11 or 12 years that we'd finished outside the top half of any division that we've been in. So my first year as a season ticket holder was the year that we won League Two. So technically speaking, as a Brentford fan, I've seen nothing but success. Mm-hmm. However, my dad was there when we got relegated to League Two. He was there in when we got to the Championship and we just went straight back down. So he's experienced the lows of being a Brentford fan and the lows of being a Brentford fan. But even still, he's not happy with the way that this season is going. Even with the recent success that we've had, he's disappointed on the way that it appears players haven't stepped up to fill the void that injured players have left. And the club maybe didn't necessarily help themselves in the transfer window in January, bringing in the support that we needed with only Reguilon coming in. I think in January was the only signing, and we definitely needed more support across the pitch at that point, but we didn't do ourselves any favors. So I'm not surprised to see people being frustrated with the way that things are going, because I, for one, am incredibly frustrated, and I can't wait for this season to be over, and I just hope that we are in the Premier League next season.
Yeah, let's agree with everything you said. Let's move on to United / relegation big picture. I've got a table in front of me that I should be able to put on the screen somehow, but I'll read it out anyway. In terms of the teams around us, we've got Sheffield United, Burnley, Luton, Forest, Everton, and obviously us as well. In terms of the run-in for each team, Sheffield United and Luton probably have the worst. They've got 3 of the top 6 to play. We've only got 2. And Burnley, Forest, and Everton only have 2 as well. Luton have got to play all of them away from home. So they've got Tottenham, Arsenal, and City away in terms of their run-in. Sheffield United also have to play Liverpool away and Man United away, which is TBC. But just in terms of our next game, we've got United at home with the prospect of Ethan, Brian, Kevin, and Christian all being back in the side. But the thing is, I can't even predict it with United anymore, Callum, because they're so yo-yo. They got a big win against Liverpool in the FA Cup, but they were beaten at home by Fulham in the week before. One thing I am absolutely terrified about is after the Fulham game at the start of the season when we won 3-0, I'd bookmarked tweets from the year before from Fulham fans about how they thought that we were going to struggle with relegation without Ivan Toney. And I had a pop at them after that game, and I'm really scared that they've bookmarked some of those tweets. So I'm really, really hoping to save me some embarrassment that we don't go down. But just in terms of the next games, Callum, Fulham play Sheffield United at home, Burnley go to Chelsea, Luton go to Tottenham, Forest play Palace at home, and this is fresh off their points deduction as well, and Everton go to Bournemouth. How you feeling in terms of the run-in? Looking at it in front of me, it's like I would say we've probably got one of the easier ones. We've got 2 of the top 6 to play, 1 away from home. 1 away, 1 at home, and some of the others have more difficult games. But just in terms of that first one against United, how are you feeling, Cal?
Nervous, to be honest with you. I up to how they play, how they played, yesterday, or Sunday, should I say? Sorry. What a performance from Manchester United. A performance I haven't seen for a very, very long time, and you could see the togetherness with the fans as well. That's something they haven't had for a very, very long time there. With the caliber of the result that was. My concern is that they will continue that form, obviously against us, and they will probably go and beat us. I hope that it doesn't come to that. I want to see a spirited Brentford performance and what could be a huge 3 points. Take the pressure off. The games coming up for us. United is huge. But we've proved in the past we can do it, and last season, they came to us. I didn't expect to beat them last year, and of course we beat them in such unique fashion. So football is brilliant. Anything can happen, and it's on Sky Sports again under the lights. So we need the place rocking. We need every single supporter bringing a red and white scarf, getting behind the team, and getting those 3 points, which are key for our season. So I'm nervous, though, Mike. Really nervous, but hopefully they'll do us proud. I'm sure they will.
Dan, how are you feeling ahead of it, mate?
I mean, in terms of the bigger picture, I think 3 wins will probably be enough. Looking at who everyone else has to play, and obviously in recent weeks we've been coming off the back of games that we haven't been doing too well in, to then find out that almost none of the teams below us won. And obviously, if you're looking in terms of where those 3 wins can come from, I think Sheffield United at home is definitely one that we should be winning, you would hope. And then you're obviously looking at 2 wins from Fulham, Bournemouth, Everton, Luton, probably 2 of those 4. And I do think that's doable. And obviously, in terms of the next two, we've got 2 home games, back to back, both under lights. It depends what Man United, it depends what Brighton turn up, because I think both of those teams this season, have the ability to, be really quite good, and then also have the ability to not be so good at all. So, I'd hope we get something out of at least one of those 2 games, but it's obviously difficult, and yeah, we don't know even what Brentford team will turn up yet, because we don't know who'll be back. I'm not convinced some of those injuries we said that will be back will actually be back.
Mm-hmm. Craig, looking at, for those listening on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts, the YouTube lot will see that I've got the run-in for each team, each relegation threatened team on the screen right now. I've nicked it from the Burnley podcast, so thank you very much, sir, for that. But looking at that, Craig, how does that make you feel? Just like we mentioned, maybe 3 more wins would be enough, but in terms of the run-in for each team, I would probably say we have quite a good one in the sense that we have to play Sheffield United at home. That Luton game for me is absolutely huge, especially if we don't pick up any points between now and then. Like, that could be the game that either keeps Luton up or sends us down, depending on how it's looking by then. But what's your take on it, Craig?
So I actually think Everton have got the better running. I think they play 4 of the other, or 5 of the bottom 6. They play 5 out of the bottom 6, including us. And 4 of them are at home. 4 of them are at home, so they probably got the better running to do them favours to keep them out of it. I think that I know that our next 3 games, obviously being United, Brighton, Villa, aren't much help for us. But Luton having Spurs away and Arsenal away within those fixtures as well might do us favours. And I think if we can get to the Sheffield United game having matched or bettered their results up to that point, and I'm praying that we beat Sheffield United, then to go possibly 8 points ahead of them with 5 games to play, including them. I mean, it's difficult to call, like you say, but they've got to win 2 more games in the last 10 games to what we do, or 9 games. Mm-hmm. They've got to win 2 more than we do, as the Forest. So both of them have to win 2 games more than us. I mean, it's not going to be fun. It's not going to be a fun 9 games unless we somehow come away from the United game with 3 points and go and lose at Spurs. To be able to go into the next 2 games with Brighton and Villa being that will be 8 points ahead of them. I'll feel a lot more comfortable. And I mean, Forest actually 8 points ahead of Forest. Not Luton, 8 points ahead of Forest.
Yeah. We have a decent record against Brighton at home, do we not, as well? Beat them last season. Did we beat them in the first year?
I think we lost like 1-0, but we were quite good, I think. I think we were quite good right near the end.
Of the season. That was right at the start of the season.
Trossard's last-minute winner.
Yeah. Right in the corner, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting, but I think, like we said, a win at home against Man United with those players back would do a lot in terms of confidence going into those next 2 against Brighton and Villa. And the Villa one, I'm really looking forward to, just because of what happened in the reverse fixture. If we have a good squad for that and we can actually be competitive, which I know will be a big ask, but when we played Villa at home, I think we were competitive for a lot of the game. And until Ben Mee got sent off, I think we probably would have won it. So it's going to be interesting, guys. I remember saying halfway through this season, if we're not going to get Europe or anything like that, it might be quite exciting to have a relegation fight. But I completely eat my words. It's been genuinely terrible, and I want this season to end right now. So,
honestly, that is the worst I've felt leaving a ground on Saturday for a very, very long time. They were singing "Free from Desire." Their company was pumping the crowd up. I mean, I couldn't wait to get out of that ground. Honestly, I was hoping to go there on Saturday and come out of there feeling ecstatic that we picked up 3 points, 3 more points closer to survival, and it was crap. And honestly, I just can't wait for the season to end. It's so much excitement at the start of the season with what it promised, and it's been well, shit
Shite.
show, really, isn't it? Yeah, pretty much. You know, it's you know, and it's frustrating. You know, how we started off the season in such fashion. Of course, we shouldn't get too greedy with these things, but just how we started off the season with how we continue playing on from last season and from where we were then to where we are now. I mean, you know, it's a completely different setup. But let's hope. We can only hope. We can only pray, and let's go and kick on towards the end of the season. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, 100%. I think that would be a good point to wrap up the podcast, guys. Eating Rain Podcast will be back next week with a special episode with a guest that I'm really excited to speak to. So do keep your eyes peeled for that one. Just before we go, remember to drop a comment down below with your thoughts post Burnley. Are we going down? Will the injuries when we come back help us in terms of the games that we've got coming up? Do we want Thomas Frank to stay or leave at the end of the season? I thought that was a given, but for some, not. And also remember to give us a follows on our socials. That's at the Elam Road on Twitter and at Elam Road Pod on Instagram. Gents, it's been a pleasure. 2 weeks without Brentford to not ruin our weekends. Get
That's
in.
Yay.
Up the bees.
Up the bees.